Hi guys, welcome back or welcome to DreamWorks Switch to Life, and in today's video, I'm going to be giving my thoughts, predictions, and everything that we know about the production of Kung Fu Panda 5. Now, some of you might be thinking, there's going to be a fifth one? They just came out with the fourth one. Well, yeah, there's also going to be a Kung Fu Panda 6. That much has been confirmed since 2011, and even the director of the fourth movie, Mike Mitchell, has said that Kung Fu Panda 4 will not be Poe's final adventure. So, if Kung Fu Panda 4 is a box office success, which it most likely will be, then it's highly likely Universal will give DreamWorks the go-ahead to begin development and production of Kung Fu Panda 5. And, unlike after the third movie, there will not be a hiatus. So, what does that mean? Well, it means that the release date of Kung Fu Panda 5 will be a lot sooner than it was for Kung Fu Panda 4. There was a 3-year gap in between the first and second movie, a 5-year gap in between the second and third movie, and then an 8-year gap in between the third and fourth movie. We're not going to have to wait an entire 8 years for the fifth movie, but we are still going to have to wait a long time considering that the film hasn't even been written yet. Now, while they do have ideas for where they want to take Poe's story, and that story has been written and rough drafted since 2011, they may change some things, and of course the actual script itself and the choreography, that stuff hasn't been written yet, and it won't begin development, that is, until Universal gives the go-ahead. So, with that in mind, when could we see the next movie? Well, previously, DreamWorks has said that they want to make 2 animated movies every year, and while that is a good goal to have, it's kind of been thrown out the window. In 2023, and of course, especially in 2024, DreamWorks announced that they would be shifting away from making all their movies in-house and instead look to other animation studios to help develop their movies. They're also going to be using AI technology. Now, while that does seem kind of worrisome, let me explain. The story, development, character designs, all of that will be done in-house at DreamWorks Animation, which means that everything will be done by artists. However, when it comes to animation, they're going to pass off that stuff to other animation studios and work on it in-house on some of their movies. What that means is they'll be partnering up with some animation studios to make some movies, like they did with Micros Animation for Captain Underpants, the first epic movie, and Orion and the Dark, as well as Jellyfish Pictures, who animated Spirit Untamed. But they'll also be partnering with Sony Pictures Imageworks to create their main movies. They'll be animating 1 hour or maybe more of their movies, while Sony Pictures Imageworks will pick up the remaining slack. And the thing is, Sony's not going to just be animating pictures throughout the movie. They'll be given complete scenes to animate, storyboard, and everything. But the main story will be written by DreamWorks Animation. Sony Pictures Imageworks will have no say in the creative story, just the animation and the use of their assets. So while this is a bit disappointing, out of all the animation partners DreamWorks could have partnered with, Sony Pictures Imageworks is by far the best. Not only did they create hit movies like Open Season and Hotel Transylvania, as well as the Angry Birds movie, but above all else, they created Spider-Verse. If that doesn't say that this is a quality animation studio, then I don't know what does. Honestly, I'm all for DreamWorks partnering with other animation studios because it means they can give us a lot more films that much sooner. However, there is 2 drawbacks to this. This means that Universal has kind of stopped renewing DreamWorks employee contracts. They're not firing any DreamWorks employees, they're just not renewing their contracts, which is a problem because that means that eventually these employees will have to find new jobs, and the people working at the animation studio will be downsized, and that's really unfortunate. But unfortunately, another bad thing that's going to happen is the use of AI. Now, again, I'm going to be very blunt. AI will not be used in the creative process. It will not be used to write the script, write the story. It will not be used to create the character designs. All that AI is going to do is help with the animation process. That's it. Now, the main reason that's happening is that Universal wants to cut the cost that it takes to make a movie, making it lower budget. And we've seen that happen with DreamWorks in the past. If you look at their past catalog, the budget for those movies was around $150. Ever since Universal has bought DreamWorks, all of the movies that they've made have had a budget lower than $100. That's kind of sad and unfortunate. Even the Kung Fu Panda films weren't safe. Kung Fu Panda 1, 2, and 3 had a budget of around $150. Kung Fu Panda 4 only had $85 million. So when does all of this happen? Well, soon, actually. After The Wild Robot, which will be DreamWorks' next movie, hitting theaters in September, DreamWorks Animation will shift its focus to outsourcing their movies to other animation studios, which is unfortunate, really. So, what can we predict about the production of Kung Fu Panda 5? Well, I think that DreamWorks themselves will want to work on that project, and that it will most likely begin development in 2024. So while it is a little bit unfortunate that DreamWorks will be handing out their movies, it does mean good news, as it means that DreamWorks can give us more movies that much faster, and we don't have to have longer wait periods. We don't have to wait an entire 8 years for Kung Fu Panda 5. We might only have to wait 3 or 4. Of course, Kung Fu Panda isn't DreamWorks' only property. They'll be working on sequels to some of their other franchises and, of course, original movies. So, while it could be a short wait, it could also be a long wait. I'm thinking anywhere between 3 to 5 years, just like in the original trilogy. What that means is that the film could be released in 2027 to 2029, and I'm personally excited for that, but now it's time to dive into the speculation side. What will the story of Kung Fu Panda 5 be? Well, let's talk about everything that we know. Back when the films were announced back in 2011 that Kung Fu Panda was going to become a 6-film franchise, they said that they wanted every single story to be its own thing, have its own complete ending, and feel like a finished movie. With that in mind, that means that there will not be a part 1, part 2 situation. That is, unless of course they want to give us a 7th Kung Fu Panda movie, but I want it to end with 6, just cuz. So the 5th movie will end on an actual ending and not a cliffhanger. That much we do know. That's going to happen no matter what. Now it's time to get into the speculation side of things. The creators of Kung Fu Panda 4 have given some of their ideas on what they would like to see for a Kung Fu Panda 5, and of course, we don't really know a lot about it, but we do know that the creators want the Furious 5 to be front and center. Many fans were disappointed that they weren't in the 4th film, and while personally I think their absence was a blessing rather than a curse, it was still kind of sad that they weren't there until the end credits song, which is really disappointing. Now, some people have been asking for DreamWorks to give us a Furious 5 spin-off movie where the Furious 5 are the main characters. Unfortunately, DreamWorks has said that they have zero plans to ever give Kung Fu Panda a spin-off film. As far as they're concerned, this is Po's story. As long as Po is the main character, it is going to be a Kung Fu Panda film. Otherwise, it is not going to happen. So, no Furious 5 spin-off, but the Furious 5 will be featured and main characters in the 5th movie. However, Po himself will continue to be the main character alongside our new protagonist, Zhen, from the 4th film. And of course, you can't make a Kung Fu Panda 5 without the Furious 5. See what I did there? But unfortunately, when it comes to the story, we don't know anything about it, aside from what we're given from the creators of Kung Fu Panda 4, and of course from the actual film itself. What fans hoped to see but didn't, and how Kung Fu Panda 5 could fix those. Well, here's what I think. Mike Mitchell has given some thoughts on what he would like to see in Kung Fu Panda 5, and not only did he say that he wanted the Furious Five to be present in the movie itself, but he also said that he had plans for a villain that would be aquatic creature related. We see in the third movie that Master Dolphin's armor is in the Jade Palace.
Master Dolphin's waterproof armor. This is my favorite.
But we don't actually see any fish characters in the franchise. Well, unless you count some TV show characters. But they gave us 2 new characters in Kung Fu Panda 4 that were fish related. Among them was Captain Fish and his mother Chip, who gave Jen and Po a ride to Juniper City. But the other one kind of felt out of place. Why was there a manta ray attacking the village at the beginning of the movie? The manta ray didn't even have any lines. He was just there. It felt really out of place. But it doesn't have to feel out of place. What if the villain of the 5th movie was actually the boss of Manta Ray, and that Manta Ray was up there attacking the village on the orders of his boss, who will be the villain of the 5th movie? That would actually be really good, and would definitely make the scene with the Manta Ray, which completely felt out of place in the 4th movie, actually matter. Now, that's just some wishful speculation that I came up with, but overall, here's what I personally want to see in the 5th movie. If they do go with the aquatic route, that's actually really good, because Po, he's kind of OP. At this point, they stopped relying on villains who just use martial arts or weaponry. They're using magic now, which is kind of a problem, because I get Po is super powerful and he needs a powerful foe to fight against, but it's kind of disappointing. I really loved Kai in the 3rd movie, but when it came to the chameleon, I loved her design, I loved her power set, and I loved her plan. But when it came to her backstory, her motive, her reasoning, there just wasn't even anything there. And then, of course, there was her intimidation factor, which, I'm not gonna lie, I loved that everybody was afraid of her, but the most we ever see her do is push a thief down a stairwell. That's really disappointing, actually. I admit she is powerful, but there's not really anything that shows why she's supposed to be feared. I mean, with Kai, he's literally taking the chi of Kung Fu masters, dead and living. That makes sense. Shen, he managed to kill Master Rhino. Of course he would manage to come across as scary and intimidating. And then of course there's Tai Lung. This guy literally beat up thousands of guards to escape from prison. Of course he's intimidating. The chameleon? No. Everybody just is afraid of her for no good reason, and we don't get that. I don't get that vibe that she deserves to be feared, especially because Po defeated her so easily. And the thing is, she was a magical sorceress. If she didn't deserve to be feared, then who does? Well, I introduce you to my personal pick for a villain for the 5th movie, an aquatic creature who just knows how to fight. He doesn't have any magic up his sleeve, he just has a smart brain, cunning intelligence, and a bloodlust for all land dwellers. Now, why would that make him such a feared bad guy? Po can easily defeat him. He took on an evil sorceress in his previous adventure. What makes him so feared? Well, the thing is, being an aquatic creature, he can hide in the water, in a place where Po can't fight. Not only because Po can't really do much underwater, we don't really see him do that, but more importantly, Po can't breathe underwater. Po could definitely beat this guy up if given the chance, but he can't do that because this villain would have the home turf advantage. Po wouldn't be able to fight him, and that would actually be really cool to watch unfold. So what kind of villain would he be? Well, honestly, I don't really care as long as he's aquatic in some way. He could be a shark, he could be an octopus, he could be just a plain old fish, he could be a clam or a whale. He could be anything. He could even be an amphibian for all I care. He could be a pirate or the king of an undersea kingdom, and honestly, it would just be really cool to watch that. Now, for the sake of this video, I'm just going to call him Captain Savage. Now, what would be this villain's plan? Well, as far as I'm concerned, wipe out land dwellers. How would he go about that? Well, simply put, What if Manta Ray was actually supposed to get the Staff of Wisdom from Po? As we know, the Staff of Wisdom acts as a doorway to the spirit realm. Now, of course, the spirit realm is home to spirits, but you know what the TV shows have said that it's also home to? Demons. Literal demons. And it's not just one or two, it's a whole bunch. In the TV shows, we meet the Mongolian Fist Demon, the Yao Guai, the White Bone Demon, and who could forget Kipa the Demon King and his army of demon brethren. So, Captain Savage's plan would be to obtain the Staff of Wisdom and use it to open a doorway to the spirit realm to summon a water demon who he could then control, and that water demon would have the power to flood the entire world, making it so land dwellers would perish while aquatic creatures would thrive. Now, I'm going to be honest, I am not really into Chinese mythology. I mean, I enjoy watching it unfold, but there is no way that I would know enough about it to determine what kind of demon or sea monster or anything. I honestly have no idea what kind of thing could cause a massive flood. So, unfortunately, I will leave that up to the creators who actually do know people from China who could help influence the story and make it authentic to Chinese culture. So how would Po go about defeating this Captain Savage, who is apparently someone that he can't fight because he can't really do anything in the water? Well, if we look at the Kung Fu Panda Legends of Awesomeness TV show, most particularly the episode The Way of the Prawn, we will meet two aquatic characters who fight on land because they have to.
Yeah, how can you and the clam survive out of the water?
Sheer force of will.
Okay.
And yes, for your information, these aquatic creatures are actually from Japan. So with that in mind, what could we see happen with Po? Well, what if we saw the reverse? If Yojiro the Prawn, Kira the Clam, and Manta Ray could all learn to fight in the air without water due to sheer force of will, what if the same could happen to Po? What if he could learn to fight in the water due to sheer force of will? Well, that would actually be really amazing, but I feel like he would need a master. Introduce Master Dolphin. We see his armor present in the Jade Palace, so what if he's a retired sage kung fu master who's too old to fight, but can still teach others how to fight in the water, and most importantly, teach Po, Zhen, and the Furious Five the way of water. You see the Avatar reference there? He could teach them how to hold their breath long enough. Being a mammal, he doesn't actually breathe water. He just holds his breath underwater. And of course, while there's definitely like some science and logistics and lung capacity, Kung Fu Panda is a world filled with magic and of course bettering yourself and being the best you can be. Something tells me that Po would not only learn how to breathe underwater from this Master Dolphin, but he would also learn how to be a master from this Master Dolphin. We see in both the third and fourth movie that Po is destined to become a teacher and a spiritual leader of the Valley of Peace, but we never actually see him do any of that. That's what the fifth movie could have him focus on, learning to be a spiritual leader of the Valley of Peace, the best way to lead. Now that would actually be a really awesome B-plot for Po, learning to be a spiritual leader and a teacher to the Valley of Peace. But that's not the only character we have. While Po will continue to be the main character of the fifth movie, the Furious Five and Zhen both deserve their own character development. We could see Zhen struggling to come to terms with the fact that she's supposed to be the next Dragon Warrior because everybody is trying to say she can't be the next Dragon Warrior. She's nothing but a filthy thief and a con artist, and she's not even that great at Kung Fu. Throughout the movie, she'll have to find a way to prove not only to everyone around her, but also to herself that she is the right choice to be the next Dragon Warrior. That would be an awesome story to see. And of course, it would make sense that the Furious Five, and especially Tigress, would get jealous of Zhen and how she was chosen to be the next Dragon Warrior. What makes this thief so worthy of the title of Dragon Warrior versus Po's best friends that he's known for years? I'm not gonna say I know what will happen in the fifth movie, but I feel like that would would be great B-plot material. Have Po not only struggle with moving to the next step of learning what it is to be a spiritual leader, but have Zhen struggle coming to terms with being the next dragon warrior. Everybody doubts her, and she has to prove herself. And the thing is, she also doubts herself because she's just a thief and con artist. There's no way she deserves to be the next dragon warrior versus these excellent kung fu masters who say they have every right to be the next dragon warrior. What does Po see in Zhen that Zhen and everybody else can't see in her? Well, that's what this movie should do. It should bring that question to the surface. So here's what I imagine the movie could look like. It opens with the scene where an aquatic creature is attacking the Valley of Peace, at which point the Furious Five and the Dragon Warrior show up. Except it's not Po, it's Zhen. And everybody is putting their doubts on Zhen while they're fighting the aquatic creature. And while they do eventually manage to defeat the aquatic creature and take them to the prison where Manta Ray is housed, mind you, Manta Ray grabs the keys off of Zhen, or whoever's carrying them, and he escapes, which leads him to the Jade Palace, where he enters a battle against Po to take the Staff of Wisdom, at which point he will return to the ocean and give it to his master, Captain Savage. Before that happens, we cut to Po, who is meditating and learning with Shifu on how to be the next spiritual leader. Unfortunately, he just doesn't have those Oogway vibes, and it's causing him stress, and he's not ready to be the next spiritual leader, and that's really disappointing to him. Anyway, once Manta Ray takes the Staff of Wisdom from Po, the Furious Five, Zhen, and Po all band together to go on a quest to retrieve it, but unfortunately they can't do that because it's like 1,000 feet underwater. Shifu comes up with the idea that they need to learn from Master Dolphin, who is an aquatic kung fu fighter that can teach them to learn how to breathe underwater. And of course, Master Dolphin himself is retired, so he can't actually fight. Master Dolphin trains them in the ways of water, how to breathe and how to fight underwater, even if you're feeling a lot of pressure. You know, both emotionally and actual aquatic pressure. Zhen isn't doing too well compared to the rest of the Furious Five, and she's beginning to continue to doubt herself. She's not worthy to be the next dragon warrior. What does Po see in her that she can't see in herself? And it's at this point that Po rises to the occasion, and he says one of those spiritual leader things that gets her back up on her feet. That makes it so that she finally has confidence in herself. Once they're ready, they go down to the aquatic realm, which I am going to call Atlantis, you know, just cause. And then we learn exactly what Captain Savage has been up to this whole time. He's been trying to use the Staff of Wisdom to summon a water demon that will flood the world of the land dwellers, which is a bit of a problem because the power of the Staff of Wisdom still lies with Po. As we find out in the fourth movie, the Staff of Wisdom has the power to open the door to the spirit realm, but in order to use that power, it has to be given to you. Which means that even though Manta Ray managed to take the Staff of Wisdom and give it to Captain Savage, the power still lies with Po because Po never gave that power to Manta Ray. Being the savage person that he is, Captain Savage would then manage to give the Staff of Wisdom back to Po, only to capture Zhen and hold her hostage until Po willingly gives up the power of the Staff of Wisdom to Captain Savage. Po willingly gives up the Staff of Wisdom to save Zhen's life, but unfortunately, using the power of the Staff of Wisdom, Captain Savage banished the Furious Five, Po, and Zhen up to the land, where now they can't fight him, while he opens up a portal to the spirit realm, summons a water demon, and tries to tame it to his control. All the while, Zhen is feeling sorry for herself that she let herself get captive, and she really doesn't deserve to be the next dragon warrior. And it's at this point that Po shows her the secret of the Dragon Scroll. Now, I actually have a personal theory about the Dragon Scroll, and that is, why would Oogway go through the trouble of creating the Dragon Scroll only for it to be completely blank and not even show anything about how you're supposed to be the next dragon warrior? Well, in Kung Fu Panda: The Paws of Destiny, we learned that the ancient Kung Fu masters managed to use hidden chi techniques to make it so that they could write messages in invisible ink. What if the Dragon Scroll does have writing on it, but it can only be revealed with Po's hero's chi? And that would be a good ideal time to reveal what exactly the message Oogway wanted to leave Po was. But of course, in this case, for Zhen, I think Po should probably teach her the original message. Which is, of course, that there is no secret ingredient. The only thing you need to be the best you can be is you. And that is when it finally clicks for Po. This whole time, he's been trying to be the spiritual leader. He's been trying to act like Oogway. He's supposed to be the next Oogway, but that's not who he is. He's supposed to be him, the best him he can be. He's not supposed to teach the way Oogway did. He's supposed to teach the way he wants to. By example, by leadership, and by kung fu awesomeness. He's not supposed to be cooped up in the Valley of Peace. He's meant to share his teachings with the entire world. And cue the monster attack from Captain Savage alongside an army of aquatic warriors ready to take over the Valley of Peace with a flood. And of course, Po, the Furious Five, Zhen, and even Shifu all band together to fight against this army. But unfortunately, there's too many of them, and that's when Po uses his spiritual leadership to help convince the villagers of the Valley of Peace to help fight against the aquatic army, but at the same time, it also helps the aquatic army realize that there isn't actually any threat here. They're just peaceful villagers who are just trying to survive, just like the aquatic citizens. Captain Savage had taught them to fear the land dwellers because they are monsters that would feast on their flesh or something like that. But realizing that they are just normal people, just like the aquatic creatures, makes them stand down and put down their weapons. And of course, this ends up resulting in Captain Savage lashing out in a fury and trying to convince his soldiers to follow him. And unfortunately, and this is something that has to happen in this fifth movie, Shifu dies in battle. And of course, he ascends to a higher plane of existence. Now, Shifu was like a father figure to Tigress, so she's fueled by anger and she attacks Captain Savage and ends up killing him and destroying the Staff of Wisdom. This means that Po now has to rise to the occasion to find a way to calm down the sea monster, which is now completely out of control. But of course, it's not Po that manages to calm down the sea monster, it's Zhen. This is Zhen's true purpose. She's meant to rise to the occasion to become the next dragon warrior, and Po has to step aside and let that happen. And it's at this point that Po realizes that the Valley of Peace doesn't need a spiritual leader. It already has one in the Furious Five and the next Dragon Warrior. And this means that Po now has to accept the fact that he needs to be a spiritual leader in his own way. Thanks to Zhen, Po manages to make peace with the land dwellers and aquatic creatures to the point where the world is saved from a world-ending flood, and thus everything goes back to normal. Except at the very end of the movie, they have a funeral for Master Shifu, and Po decides to declare that Master Tigress should become the next leader of the Jade Palace. But by ascending to that position, it also means the disbanding of the Furious Five. And that is really rather unfortunate because that means that the Furious Five, all Kung Fu masters, need to step up and take on their next mantle of becoming masters of their own Kung Fu schools. Zhen will stay at the Jade Palace training under Master Tigress, while Po and the rest of the Furious Five travel the world looking for locations that will need the teachings of Kung Fu. This is Po's destiny, to teach in his own unique way, not just by being cooped up in the Valley of Peace, but by spreading the word of Kung Fu and helping masters grow to their next potential, as well as training the next generation of Kung Fu masters in these new locations. And so, Po won't even become the next spiritual leader of the Valley of Peace. Instead, he will create his own title and teach his own way. He will become the Dragon Master, and he will spread the teachings of Kung Fu throughout the land. And not being needed in the Valley of Peace, Po will realize that he should pick a new home, and he will ask his parents to move out. He will have his father move back into Panda Village, and Mr. Ping will close up shop and leave and move into Panda Village soon after, while Po travels the land with the Furious Five, setting up their new Kung Fu schools. Now, the main reason that I say that is because this movie will also be a prequel to the Kung Fu Panda TV shows, The Paws of Destiny and The Dragon Knight. In those shows, we see Po going by Dragon Master, not Dragon Warrior, not spiritual leader of the Valley of Peace. And we also see that Lee and Mr. Ping are both living in Panda Village alongside Po. Nothing to do with the Valley of Peace. And that's why I think that the fifth movie should end with Po leaving the valley. So the movie won't really end on a cliffhanger, but it will have a bit of a somber ending, and the end credits will show the Furious Five building up their own Kung Fu schools and taking on new students to train. And so that's my story for how I would want Kung Fu Panda 5 to go. Now, again, I'm not the guy who works at DreamWorks, but if I had a choice in how Kung Fu Panda 5 would unfold, that would be exactly how it would happen. Granted, a bit more fleshed out, there would also be humor, action sequences, and of course, a lot of emotional music and character development. So, there you go, DreamWorks Animation. I just gave you your fifth Kung Fu Panda film. Granted, of course, there is also the fact that you've been planning 5 and 6 since 2011, so you probably have an idea for where the story should go. But of course, I also have ideas for the 6th movie. They're not really fleshed out, and I have no idea who the villain would be, but most of them just involve a time skip into the future, which will be Po's last adventure before the movie ends with him retiring as a Kung Fu master and living out the rest of his days teaching Kung Fu not through action, but through words and stories of his life. But overall, what are your guys' opinions on Kung Fu Panda 5? Do you like my theory, or do you have some of your own? Make sure to leave your comments down below. And if you enjoyed today's video, make sure that you like and subscribe so you can keep up to date on all things DreamWorks, including next week's video when I will be discussing all upcoming DreamWorks projects. With that in mind, I hope you're staying safe out there, and I will see you all in my next one. Bye-bye.
The Dragon Warrior.
Who? Oh man, are my adventures really that regional?